The contractions came without mercy, deep, bone-wrenching spasms that ripped through her body like lightning splitting an old tree. Zara was a beautiful lioness, golden fur rippling across powerful muscle, but in this moment she was completely vulnerable, no territory to protect her, no pride to stand at her side, just the dry African plains, the smell of rain coming from far away, and the pain of new life demanding to enter a world that wanted nothing more than to kill it. Her breathing came in short gasps. She had hidden herself in a dense thicket of acacia bushes near a dried riverbed, the kind of place where a lioness goes when she knows she is about to create something precious and fragile. She had been in labor for 8 hours. The first cub was already starting to crown, its tiny head beginning to stretch her body open in a way that made her want to scream. But screaming would be the last thing she did alive, because somewhere in the darkness beyond her hiding spot, the hyena clan was hunting. She could hear them, not close yet, but moving in her direction with the kind of coordination that only comes from a pack that has hunted together for years. Their whooping calls echoed across the savannah, that haunting sound that makes every animal freeze and listen. There were 12 of them. She had counted earlier when the pain was still manageable. 12 hyenas led by a female named Keturah, who had killed 3 lionesses in the past 2 years alone. This was not just any clan. These were killers who understood strategy, who could communicate with each other using sounds and movements that resembled human military tactics more than animal instinct. Another contraction hit, and Zara's entire body went rigid. She bit down on a branch to keep from crying out. The cub was coming whether she was ready or not, whether the world was safe or not, whether she lived to see it take its first breath or died trying to bring it into existence. The night swallowed everything beyond 10 feet. She could only see the shapes of bushes and the pale sky above her. Her amber eyes, usually so sharp and calculated, were unfocused with pain. Her lioness instincts screamed at her to run, to find higher ground, to get to safety, but her body would not obey. She was locked in place, prisoner to the ancient dance of birth that had played out exactly the same way for thousands of years. The hyenas were getting closer. She could smell them now, that distinctive scent of wild dogs mixed with something fouler. Rot, disease, death. Then came the first cub. A male, small and slick with birth fluid, let out a weak cry that sounded more like a kitten than a lion. Zara's maternal instincts exploded into life. She turned immediately and began licking him clean, her rough tongue removing the fluid and stimulating his breathing. He was perfect, small, perfect paws, tiny claws, a face that already carried the nobility of his species, despite being less than 30 seconds old. She bit through the umbilical cord and pushed him toward her belly. He immediately began searching for milk, pure instinct guiding him to what he needed. But there was no time to savor this moment. Her body was already preparing to expel the second cub. The contractions came again, harder this time, and Zara could feel the second life fighting to enter the world. The hyena sounds were definitely closer now. She could hear individual calls, Keturah's voice, that distinctive low growl that meant hunting mode. The clan had caught a scent. Maybe her scent, maybe her fear, maybe the fresh blood that always comes with birth. The second cub came faster than the first. Another male, this one slightly larger, crying with more force. Zara cleaned him the same way, biting the cord, pushing him to her belly where he could feed alongside his brother. 2 cubs, 2 males, strong ones, from what she could already tell. They nursed with desperate hunger, their tiny mouths working her body for colostrum that would give them immunity from the diseases that killed so many cubs in their first weeks. But there was a third cub coming. She could feel it. Her body was not finished. The contractions continued, and she realized with a sick feeling that labor was not over. There could be one more, maybe 2. Some litters were this way. Her own mother had given birth to 5 cubs, though only 3 survived to become adults. Zara had no idea how many her body would try to produce today. She had no idea how much time she had left. The hyenas were very close now, close enough that she could hear their individual breathing, close enough that she could see movement in the darkness beyond her thicket. They were circling, testing the perimeter of her hiding spot, trying to determine if their prey was inside. Keturah's voice cut through the night again, that distinctive howl that meant she had confirmed something. The alpha had picked up Zara's scent. The third cub was coming. This one was not cooperating. Zara could feel it struggling inside her, kicking against her uterine wall in a way that caused sharp spikes of pain more intense than anything before. She tried to position herself differently, but there was no room. The acacia thicket was dense enough to hide her, but it barely had space for her body, let alone the gymnastics required to birth a cub that was refusing to come out easily. Then came the sound that changed everything. The hyenas attacked the thicket. They did not come cautiously. They did not test the perimeter carefully. They came with the sudden violence of predators who had decided the hunt was over and the killing could begin. Multiple sets of jaws snapped at branches, trying to bite their way through to the lioness and her newborns. Zara heard the sickening crunch of wood being torn apart. Ketura's voice screaming commands at her clan, driving them into a frenzy, sensing blood and birth and vulnerability and prey. Zara did something that changed her life. She stopped laboring. Her body, responding to the external threat, released a surge of adrenaline so powerful it overrode the contractions. Her muscles tensed in a completely different way. Her mind shifted from the maternal focus of birth to the warrior focus of combat. The lioness who had been pushing new life into the world became a lioness preparing to defend it with her last breath. She crouched over her two newborn cubs, positioning her body to shield them. Her lips pulled back to reveal fangs designed by evolution for exactly this situation. Her eyes, which had been soft with maternal instinct, turned hard as stone. A low growl rumbled from deep in her chest, the sound that every hyena in the Serengeti knows means death is coming for whoever makes the wrong move. The hyenas paused. They had expected a lioness in labor to be helpless, weak, terrified. What they found instead was a mother lioness who had just become the most dangerous predator on the African plain. There is something in the brain of every maternal animal that cannot be explained by simple biology. When a creature gives birth, when those first hours of bonding happen, a transformation occurs that turns even prey animals into berserkers capable of taking down predators 3 times their size. Zara's cubs were less than 5 minutes old, but she would have fought 100 hyenas without flinching. Ketura was the first to come through the broken thicket. She was the largest female in her clan, weighing nearly 80 pounds, with a scarred face and eyes that had seen 100 kills. She was fast and smart, and had never faced a lioness in condition to actually fight back. She expected to find a lioness on her side, still bleeding, vulnerable, easy prey. Instead, she found 2 tons of concentrated fury. Zara launched herself at Ketura without hesitation. The lioness's claws found the hyena's face before Ketura could even react. Blood exploded across the darkened thicket as Zara's raking strike opened gashes from the hyena's left eye to her jaw. Ketura screamed and tried to retreat, but Zara was on her immediately. The lioness was bleeding from the exertion of labor, weakened by 9 months of pregnancy, her body shaking with exhaustion. None of that mattered. She grabbed Ketura's rear leg with her jaws and twisted with force that broke bone. The hyena's scream brought her entire clan charging into the thicket at once. They came from multiple directions, trying to overwhelm the lioness through sheer numbers. It was the classic hyena tactic that had worked countless times before. 7 hyenas attacked from the left. 4 came from the right. 1 tried to climb over fallen branches from above. What they did not realize was they were attacking not just a lioness, but a lioness protecting newborn cubs. Zara's body moved with a speed that seemed impossible for something that had just given birth. A hyena came at her from the left, and she pivoted with the grace of a dancer, her hind legs driving backward with such force that she broke the hyena's ribs. Another came from above, and she caught it mid-air, her jaws closing around its throat before its paws could touch her. She threw the creature across the thicket like it weighed nothing. The problem was that there were too many of them. Even a lioness in her prime, even a lioness protecting her young, even a lioness fueled by the fury of maternal instinct, cannot fight 12 hyenas at once without eventually being overwhelmed. Ketura, despite her shattered leg and torn face, called her clan into a tighter formation. They began coordinating their attacks. 3 would come from the left, drawing Zara's attention. Then 2 more would attack from the right. When she spun to defend against the right, the ones from the left would circle and bite at her hindquarters. It was brilliant strategy. It was also working. Zara felt teeth sink into her back leg. She pivoted and killed the hyena responsible. But in those seconds of attention, another one bit her shoulder. She spun again, finding and breaking that one's spine, but not before 2 more had managed to land bites on her flanks. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. Her breathing was getting harder. The exhaustion from labor was starting to catch up with her adrenaline surge. But she did not stop fighting. She could not. Behind her, in the center of the thicket where the branches were thickest and highest, two newborn cubs were nursing, dependent and helpless. They had come into the world 5 minutes ago. Their first sight had been their mother's face. Their first sound had been hyena calls and the roar of combat. Their first sensation had been their mother's body shielding them from teeth and claws. Their cub's first sight was war. Zara made a decision in that moment that would define everything that came next. She was not going to win this fight. Not with 12 hyenas, not while she was bleeding out, not while her body was still in shock from childbirth. She could not save herself, but she could save her cubs. She rammed through the thicket toward a gap between two large rocks. The hyenas came at her from all sides, but Zara moved with pure purpose now. She reached the gap and squeezed through, her body barely fitting, and then she kept going. Behind her, the hyena clan tried to follow, but the gap was too narrow for them. They came at her on the other side, in the open air beyond her thicket fortress, but now she had room to move. She ran, bleeding, exhausted, having given birth just minutes before. She ran across the dark African plain with hyenas snapping at her heels. She could not go back to her cubs. If she did, the hyenas would follow her there and finish what they started. She had to lead them away. She had to buy her cubs time to nurse, to rest, to develop enough strength to survive the first critical hours of their lives. Zara's running became a dance with death. She ran toward the dried riverbed, deeper into the darkness where the hyenas would have to rely more on scent than on sight. She ran with knowledge that every mile she traveled was a mile away from her cubs. She ran knowing she was slowly bleeding out. She ran knowing that every breath was becoming harder. Behind her, Keturah and her clan pursued with the relentless hunger of predators who could taste victory. They could feel her weakness. They could smell her blood. They could hear her breathing, getting more labored with each passing minute. This was what they lived for. This was the moment when the hunt became the kill. But Zara did something none of them expected. She stopped running. In a clearing surrounded by large boulders, she turned and faced them. The hyenas froze. They had expected her to keep running. They had expected her to show fear. What they found instead was a lioness who had made peace with her own death, and had decided that if she was going to die, it would be taking as many of them with her as possible. She killed 3 more before the clan brought her down. A lioness bleeding from dozens of wounds, weakened by labor and blood loss, physically exhausted, fighting 12 hyenas in open ground. She broke bones and tore flesh. She broke Keturah's other leg, leaving the alpha female crippled and unable to continue. She killed 1 hyena with a bite to the spine and another by slamming it against a boulder with such force that it cracked the animal's skull. But in the end, there were simply too many of them. Her back leg finally gave out. Her breathing turned to gasps. A young hyena got its teeth into her throat, and Zara realized with strange clarity that this was the moment when everything ended. After 31 years of life, after surviving countless hunts and territorial battles and challenges from other lionesses, after 9 months of pregnancy and hours of labor, this was where her story came to a close. In her final moment, she did not think about her own death. She thought about her cubs, hidden in the thicket, nursing on her milk, warm and safe and unaware that their mother was no longer in the world. She wondered if they would survive. She wondered if the pride would find them. She wondered if she had bought them enough time. Then everything went dark. The hyenas left her body at dawn, having fed on the lioness who had fought them alone. Keturah and her surviving clan retreated, wounded and exhausted, needing to rest before they could hunt again. In their mind, the hunt was over. The prey was dead. The land belonged to them. But they did not know about the thicket. They did not know about 2 newborn cubs hidden in the densest part, still nursing on their mother's milk that would last for several more hours before they became hungry and vulnerable. They did not know that Zara's roar, the roar she had released when she first charged at them, had carried across the darkness in a pattern that only one other lioness would recognize. It was a call for help. It was a warning. It was a message that meant only one thing to her sister. Come now, bring the pride. Everything is dying. Amara was Zara's younger sister, born to the same mother, raised in the same pride, bonded in the way that only sisters in the wild can be bonded. When she heard that roar, the sound that carried such desperation and finality, she did not hesitate. She woke the rest of the pride immediately. 5 lionesses and 3 nearly grown females, who were almost ready to be considered adults themselves. She explained what she had heard with the kind of communication that only comes from years of living together, from hunting together, from raising cubs together. It took them 2 hours to reach the clearing where Zara's body lay. It took them another 10 minutes to find the thicket and the 2 cubs, mewling softly, wondering where their mother had gone. Amara approached the cubs carefully. They were not her own, but her sister's blood ran through their bodies. Her sister's genetics lived in their forms. She touched her nose to each one, recognizing Zara's scent beneath the blood and birth fluid. Then she lay down in the thicket beside them, offering her own milk to the cubs who had just lost their mother. The other lionesses formed a circle around the thicket, their eyes scanning the darkness, ready for anything that moved. They had seen Zara's body. They understood what had happened. A lioness had given birth while being attacked by hyenas. A lioness had fought off an entire clan to protect her cubs. A lioness had sacrificed her own life so that her young might have a chance to live. It was the kind of story that would be told for years to come. It was the kind of moment that defined what it meant to be a lioness. It was the kind of sacrifice that made other lionesses understand why they were willing to risk everything, to fight anything, to die if necessary. The 2 cubs were named Shaba and Rafiki by Amara and the Pride. They grew up knowing only that their mother was dead and that their aunt and the Pride had raised them as their own. But there was something in their blood, something inherited from Zara's fierce protection, that made them different from other young males. Shaba grew faster than his brother. His mane came in darker. His roar developed earlier and with more power. He carried in his body the genetics of a mother who had fought hyenas while in labor, who had made the decision to sacrifice herself so that he could live. By the time Shaba was 2 years old, he had already killed a hyena that wandered too close to the Pride's territory. By the time he was 3, he had developed a reputation among the younger males as someone who did not back down from any fight, no matter the odds. The Pride whispered that Shaba had his mother's fire, that he would be a warrior unlike any other. When he finally became old enough to leave the Pride and seek his own territory, Shaba did something that surprised everyone. He did not go far. He established his territory just 3 miles from where his mother had given birth while being attacked. He did not hunt hyenas out of aggression or territory protection. He hunted them out of something deeper, something that lived in his bones, something that felt like memory, even though he had never known his mother except through the stories told by Amara and the other lionesses. 5 years after Zara's death, Shaba had killed 37 hyenas. 37. More hyenas killed by a single male than had been recorded in generations. He did not kill them all at once. He killed them over years of encounters, some deliberate, some just circumstance. He killed the ones that got too close to his territory. He killed the ones that threatened his first pride of lionesses. He killed the ones that simply reminded him of that night when his mother gave birth while under attack. The hyena clans learned quickly to fear the dark-maned lion with the reputation for violence. They learned to avoid his territory. They learned to hunt in different areas, even if those areas were less rich with prey. Because a lion who killed hyenas without hesitation, a lion who seemed to enjoy the hunt, a lion who would track a single hyena for miles just to complete an execution, was not a lion to be trifled with. Keturah, the hyena matriarch who had led the attack on Zara, lived another 2 years after that terrible night. She survived with a shattered leg that never healed properly, leaving her unable to run at full speed. She survived with scars across her face that would never fade, but she did not survive long enough to see the full extent of Shaba's revenge. She was killed by a different pride, a rival coalition that took over her territory when she became too weak to defend it. In a way, Zara had won. She had not just saved her cubs by leading the hyenas away from the thicket. She had condemned their entire clan to years of fear and loss. Every female in Keturah's group that bore cubs would have them hunted by Shaba. Every young hyena that was born in that territory would learn to fear the dark-maned lion before it learned to hunt. The entire ecosystem had shifted because one lioness decided that her life was less important than her cub's survival. Rafiki, Shaba's brother, took a different path. He was gentler, more like his aunt Amara, more interested in building strong families than in the violence of constant territorial battles. But he always had his brother's back. When Shaba needed to defend his territory or pursue a specific hyena across miles of hunting ground, Rafiki would stay and maintain the den, protect Shaba's growing cubs, ensure that the pride remained strong and united. Together they built something lasting, a kingdom that was known across the Serengeti for its stability, its protection of young, its vicious response to hyenas. Lions were born in Shaba's pride that carried the genetics of a lioness who had fought impossible odds while in labor, that carried the blood of a mother who had made the ultimate sacrifice. They became legends without ever knowing why. They were fierce without ever understanding that they inherited their fierceness from a lioness they had never met. They were protective without realizing they were protecting their territory, the same way their mother had protected her newborn cubs, with the kind of desperation that comes from knowing that the weak do not survive unless the strong are willing to fight for them. 15 years after Zara's death, researchers studying the pride were able to piece together the story by finding her bones in that clearing, by hearing the tales told by the pride of lionesses, by observing the unusual territorial behavior of Shaba and the other lions born from Zara's bloodline. They documented it, published it, made it part of the scientific understanding of lion behavior and maternal sacrifice. But the real truth, the truth that could never be measured or documented or published in any journal, was simpler. A lioness gave birth while being attacked by hyenas. She fought back instead of running. She sacrificed herself instead of protecting herself. And in doing so, she created a legacy that would echo through generations, that would shape the behavior of lions yet unborn, that would prove to every young female in the pride that the fiercest thing in nature is not a hunter or a fighter or a warrior. The fiercest thing in nature is a mother protecting her young. This is what happened in the African wild. This is the story of a lioness whose name was Zara, a lioness whose cub's first sight was not a gentle introduction to the world, but a battle. A lioness who showed that sometimes life begins not in peace, but in war. And sometimes that war is exactly what it takes to forge warriors who will survive, who will thrive, who will protect their own territory and their own bloodline, with the kind of intensity that changes the entire landscape. If you could have been there that night, what would you have done? Would you have fought like Zara, or would you have run? The choice defines everything about who we are, both in the wild and in the civilized world. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story of a mother's sacrifice, of a lioness's courage, of cubs born into chaos and raised to be legends, moved you even a little bit, please like and subscribe to the channel. Because these are the true stories of the African wilderness, the stories that show us what it means to survive, what it means to love, what it means to protect the ones we care about, no matter the cost.